So this is one of the previously lost imperial eggs from the Romanov era, and it's worth about $33 million, but it was almost sold for its weight in scrap gold. And for this whole story to make sense, you need to understand a little bit about the Romanovs, how the Fabergé eggs got lost, and where they all went. And there are still 6 missing Fabergé eggs. So the Fabergé eggs started in 1885 when Alexander III commissioned one for his wife, and they were made by Peter Carl Fabergé. But what made them special was little secret mechanisms within the egg, and then you had to play with the egg to reveal a secret. For example, the first Fabergé egg opened up to reveal a gold yolk and a hen. But now here's where it gets messy. The Russian Revolution in 1917 ended centuries of Romanov rule. The Bolsheviks seized all of the Romanov treasures, including the eggs, and they sold them to fund the Soviet state. But there's more to it than that. In 1918, Tsar Nicholas and his family were executed, and this is part of why finding the eggs is so complicated. To avoid public backlash and get these eggs sold, some of them were intentionally miscategorized to hide their origin, and they started getting sold and scattered all across the world. So this particular egg, in 1964, it was listed in a catalog by Fabergé, but because nobody realized what it was, it got passed around and eventually made its way to a scrap dealer. Thank God he overestimated how much he could actually get for it because no one would buy it. This put him in a financial bind and he started researching it, and it turned out to be the Third Imperial Egg. So of all the missing eggs, 6 are still unaccounted for, and one of them has 0 trace. No idea where it could be. Now, the first missing egg is the hen and sapphire pendant egg. It's been described as a gold hen with rose-cut diamonds and containing a sapphire pendant surprise. The very last record of this is in the Kremlin Armory in 1922, but no photographs, no sketches, nothing exists for us to identify this, so no one is quite sure what it looks like. Next, we have the Cherub with Chariot egg, and this one has some clues. There's a blurry reflection of it from a picture from 1902, and this photo is the only visual reference of this egg, but it is believed to feature a gold cherub pulling a chariot. And historians have pieced together this little bit of evidence and this reflection of a photo to kind of guess what it looks like, but the location is completely unknown. Number 3 is the Mauve Egg with medallions, and this one might actually be lost forever because fragments of the egg have been found, but the egg itself is missing. It had these heart-shaped medallions which were miniature portraits of the Romanov family, and those have been rediscovered. So it's very possible that the egg itself was taken apart, it was dismantled and sold for the stones and the gold. Because keep in mind, these eggs are opulent. They're valuable by themselves just based on the materials. It'd be very easy to think it's just a gaudy knick-knack and break it apart. So number 4 is the nécessaire egg. I don't think I'm saying that right. It's been described as a fine gold egg with diamonds, rubies, sapphires. And it's also said to contain something called 13 diamond set implements, but I could not figure out what that means. What's exciting about this one is in 2022, we got a lead. Archival evidence suggested that this egg was sold to a Swiss collector in the 50s. The buyer was labeled as stranger and the sales price was £1,250, but this was the 1950s and it could have changed hands a lot since then. It's very possible that someone inherited it and doesn't even know what it is. So recently, Wartsky, where the egg was sold in the 50s, has been trying to bring awareness to whoever is currently in possession of it, because that's all we got to go off of. Number 5 is the Royal Danish Egg, and this is one of the bigger ones. It was a tribute to Empress Maria's Danish heritage, and while we do know it's larger, that's all we know. Because again, there's no photographs and no sketches. The little bit that is known about the Danish egg comes from this invoice and a description of inventory of valuables that belonged to the Empress. And this image is a recreation of that. Now, the last missing egg is Alexander III commemorative egg. The fate is completely unknown. No trace, no track. If your grandma has this egg in her kitchen, please let me know. Now, the next piece of the story is the sale of the Fabergé eggs and how they started spreading in the West. And a lot of it has to do with a guy named Armand Hammer. If that name sounds familiar, it's because, why, yes, he is related to Armie Hammer. Armand Hammer was a Soviet-connected American businessman, and during the Soviet state sales in the 1920s and the 30s, Hammer acquired and resold a lot of Romanov artifacts, including the eggs. And there's proof of this because some of the missing eggs, including the Cherub with Chariot, were listed in Hammer's catalogs. So the Third Imperial Egg is the one we started the video on. It was found in 2012, but my favorite missing and rediscovered one was the Diamond Cellist Egg Surprise, because this was absolutely wild. It was found mislabeled in the British Royal Collection, and it had just been sitting there for decades. In 2015, it was discovered as a mislabeled piece, and this mislabeling is actually something that makes finding the eggs so difficult. What most likely happened a lot is that there was poor documentation or lack of expertise. Like, whoever put the egg in the British collection probably knew what it was, but somewhere along the lines it got mislabeled, and it's just been sitting there all this time with nobody knowing what it was. So it was a missing egg, but now it's been found. And now somewhat recently we got the yacht egg. In 2022, a potential Fabergé imperial egg was seized during the US capture of a Russian oligarch's yacht. However, no pictures have been made available to to the public. It could just be a replica or a pendant, but if it was, an expert would have known that. So why bring it up unless it potentially is one of the Imperial eggs? Now here's a little bonus Fabergé story that doesn't make any sense. Fabergé spider made its way onto Pawn Stars many years ago. Rick recognized it for what it was and he paid the lady way more than she asked for. Then for some reason, after airing, this entire video got scrubbed off the internet. Fabergé experts came out and said that this was not a Fabergé spider and they had nothing to do with it. Now some people think this is a forgotten Fabergé design and they lost record of it because Fabergé did go through a devastating fire and they lost a lot of documentation and designs. Some people believe it could be an undocumented or forgotten Fabergé spider. Okay, so now, why do the Fabergé eggs hide in plain sight for so long? Key here is that the intentional mislabeling done by the Soviets to obscure the history is really where it all started to get lost. And the next piece is likely fragmentation. Like, we already know one egg was dismantled. But lastly, and the one that I do hope for, is sneaky private collections. Collectors are pretty notorious for keeping their treasures locked away. There's so many rare items that get lost in the black market and then they get purchased by some millionaire, billionaire, and then they're sitting secretly in a vault somewhere. And the owners don't want to let us know what they have because of backlash or fear of being pressured into giving it over to a museum, fear of theft. This is why it's still so hard to track down the eggs. And I truly hope that the remaining eggs are like sitting on some grandma's mantle. Maybe she thinks it's an Avon perfume bottle and someday they'll all come back to light. I hope.